firies sick of taking the heat. They want money and men, and the government is not amused.
Listen, stop wanking yourselves. Stop wanking yourselves.
Also, Queensland's budget and your health is a big ticket item.
Plus, quit smoking with a smile. This was there.
They arrived en masse. 500 angry placard-waving firemen led by the family of a Gold Coast firefighter killed on duty last year. They used Budget Day to highlight their concerns about undermanning and cash shortages in the fire service.
What do we want?
More men!
What do we want?
More men!
They say the public is no longer safe and blame the fat cats who run the service.
Seems like we're being kicked in the guts the whole time.
The rally heard nearly all of Brisbane's 28 fire stations were understaffed. The firemen want a return to safer working numbers. They want 1 officer and 3 firemen sent to call-outs, and staff levels in Brisbane increased immediately. The march snaked its way to Parliament House and a loud shouting match with Deputy Premier Tom Burns.
We got to put people on, there's no doubt about that. We'll train 154 people in the next 12 months.
But after resignations and retirements, Mr Burns' figure translates to just 49 extra firefighters on the front line. Also on their way, 38 new state-of-the-art appliances announced in today's state budget. The vehicles will replace outdated models.
You're a politician and you're telling us the kind of vehicles we run around in?
Yeah,
We've been telling you that for years.
No, you haven't been telling me.
Mr Burns told the protesters in no uncertain manner what he thought of demands to sack the service's top public servants to save money.
Listen, stop wanking yourselves. Stop wanking yourselves.
Opposition leader Rob Borbidge was cheered when he addressed the men, announcing instant action if the coalition was elected.
If we did away with the fattest of the fat cats that are running corporate services in the Queensland Fire Service, that'd free up $9 million extra that could go to service delivery.
Tony Fabris, 10 News.
Mr Borbidge spent the better part of the day juggling numbers, but no more so than Queensland Treasurer Keith.
This is National 9 News with Mike London and Heather Ford.
Tom Burns lets fly at firefighters as the government hands down a record spending budget.
High school girl's death blamed on toxic shock.
Another Bulldog quits the Super League for a big pay rise. Good evening. Insults have been traded between the Deputy Premier and angry firefighters, claiming cutbacks are putting their lives at risk. The firefighters marched on Parliament where they jeered Tom Burns. He hit back with an amazing piece of abuse.
Firefighters gathered in a show of force, claiming they don't have the manpower to do their job. They say the minimum safety level is 1 officer and 3 firefighters to each pump, and that must be put into place immediately.
They always fall short. They will not admit that we need a minimum of 1 and 3.
Despite an increasing fire levy, they say the money isn't reaching the front line. 500 strong, they marched through the streets. The widow and family of Noel Watson, one of the 2 men who died in the blaze at Southport last year, joined the march.
What do we want? More men! What do we need?
1 and 3!
When do we want it?
Now!
Outside the gates of Parliament House, they demanded the Emergency Services Minister. The anger over the loss of their colleagues was clear.
We lost 2 poor bloody good blokes at Southport because of operational procedures and because of equipment, right?
Mr Burns fielded questions but was shouted down by the angry crowd. The abuse continued.
Listen, stop wanking yourselves. Stop wanking yourselves. I wouldn't like you to be trying to help me.
Mr Burns says a working party has been set up to look at providing 4-man crews. It will also consider safety issues raised at the inquest into the Southport tragedy. Rebecca Jensen, National 9 News.
Stand by for the state election that received some mixed reviews.
She's very pretty.
I can't believe she's got such big boobs.
But it seems nothing can stop this beauty in black. From Cairns, she popped across to London today for more attention from the cameras and her newlywed husband as the couple launched a new soft drink.
We remember World War II 50 years on. Good evening, I'm Neil McLean.
And I'm Kathy Burke. Welcome to Prime Gold Coast News.
The They marched to the Isle of Capri office of the state opposition leader Rob Borbidge, and as we found out, their fight was not a political one, but a life and death battle.
What do we want? More men. When do we want it? Now.
It's a simple request, but one firefighters say hasn't been addressed. That's despite promises by Emergency Services Minister Tom Burns following a similar march in Brisbane, despite recommendations by Gold Coast Coroner Marshall Davies and the tragic deaths of 2 local firemen 18 months ago. As officers rallied before the march, a union official told them the aim now was to highlight the threat to public safety caused by staff shortages.
What you're seeing around you as we stand here today is the highest concentration of residential high-rise anywhere in Australia, and the needs have to be identified and then responded to.
And I'm afraid, and I've said this for many years, the only time we'll get real government action is when you have a major body count and the people are lying out on the pavements like we've seen happen overseas.
All of the firefighters marching here today are off duty. That leaves just 30 officers to protect the whole of the coast, and unfortunately that's a normal situation. Despite the banners union officials denied was a political stunt 2 days before the election, the government has promised 152 officers statewide. Hoping for a better offer from opposition leader Rob Borbidge, he promised replacements for officers who leave, as well as 132 extra men.
There have been too many ministers, there have been too many politicians that haven't been prepared to listen to the people on the ground who put their lives at risk every day of the week to protect the wider community.
Regardless of Saturday's results, recruits won't be operational for a year. And officers also presented a petition to Mr Borbidge backing their claims. Minister Burns has directed the fire service to get back to the negotiating table with the union. Meantime, bans on some non-emergency work remain in place.
Deaths. The men marched with the vivid memory of their colleagues who died last year at Southport.
They're always foremost in our minds.
The inquest into the deaths of Herbie Fennell and Noel Watson recommended breathing gear and communications be improved.
All the inquest did was amplify what we've been telling them for years.
The union says crew numbers must rise to stop more deaths.
Emergency Services Minister Tom Burns says he's disappointed by the march, saying his government has honoured commitments made after the inquiry.
Mr Burns has set up a working party to implement inquiry recommendations and boosted overtime funding and staff numbers.
He needs to go further. 152 staff will do nothing other than to lead us tread water for the next 12 months.
The march ended at the office of Coalition leader Rob Borbidge. The union pariah became a hero. Presented with a petition, he told its signatories what they wanted to hear.
We'll work with you.
And promised to topple bureaucrats.
The position of Director General of the Department of Emergency Services will be abolished.
Only emergency calls are being attended on the coast, while firefighters continue industrial action. On the Gold Coast, Karen Huff, National 9 News.
A man has been run down in the driveway of an apartment block at Miami. Witnesses say he was struck and injured as he walked into the Meridian Apartments in 6th Avenue about an hour ago. One report said the driver of the car deliberately swerved into the man. He was treated at the scene for leg and head injuries before being transported to hospital. He'd been thrown up onto the windscreen of the vehicle as it crashed into a wall. The manager of the apartments was also struck by the car as he went to help.
Got me a beauty.
The manager suffered lacerations to the head. Police are questioning the driver of the vehicle. The occupant woke around 8:30 and ran from the burning room. Firemen controlled the blaze in about 5 minutes, with the 5 people inside all escaping uninjured. And a small fire broke out in the ceiling of a shop at the Treetops shopping centre late this afternoon. It's believed the fire started in a refrigeration unit. Fire and ambulance units responded. The fire was quickly contained. And firemen evacuated a surface motel today, honing skills to battle a high-rise fire. They arrived to discover a person trapped on the 9th floor of the Islander resort. Staff swung into action, evacuating guests, then the rescue.
OK, the crew's on their way up now.
After 10 minutes, they emerged with the victim.
Yeah, we saw a couple of little minor problems. As far as the actual evacuation went, that went very well.
The drill was part of Fire Awareness Week.
And he purposely swerved at him and aimed at him and crunched him up against the metalwork.
The offender then abandoned his car around the corner. He'd also sideswiped a number of other vehicles. Nearby workmen gave chase as he left his wife and 2 young children to explain to police. David Mackay, Prime Gold Coast News.
Construction on the Gold Coast waited as the motel's fire wardens went to work.
Have we got any word from the 10th floor?
The fire brigade was on the scene quickly to take over.
Okay, and we've got someone unaccounted on the 9th floor.
Within a few minutes, firefighters had saved a trapped guest from her room. Although there was no fire, today's exercise was a vital test of fire safety, as building owners must have correct evacuation and communication procedures.
And under legislation, they are required to have their fire services maintained regularly, and they are regularly monitored by fire protection companies and also the fire service with building inspections.
And how does Islander management rate its performance?
Obviously, we made some minor errors. What we will do now is obviously go back and do a bit of a post-mortem.
Diane By, Prime Gold Coast News.
Thanks, Diane. A Gold Coast company is...
Gold Coast Local News with Rob Reddings.
All aboard as Nerang Station officially opens. Man bashed, his family bound in home invasion. Worker horrifically burnt in gas pipe explosion. Charges boss Paul Broughton calls timeouts. The electricians received burns to more than half of his body after a gas pipe exploded into a toxic inferno. The man was airlifted to Royal Brisbane Hospital half an hour ago. He's in a critical condition.
Emergency crews arrived at the Burleigh Cove estate to find the 1 metre deep pit well alight. Flames fuelled by natural gas metres high.
A massive explosion, and then we've looked over and seen him crawling out the hole, so we've run over to help him out.
Workers did what they could to ease the savage burns to the electrician's back, arms and legs.
And we've taken the shirt off his back because it was all on fire. We've rolled him on his back, took out the flames, then we've just started putting water on him.
It's lucky there was work people on the side just across the road here.
It's believed an electrical spark made contact with a gas pipe in the pit, causing the explosion. Workers asking why the gas main was not turned off in the first place.
But I knew it was on.
Well, he probably thought the site itself was isolated from the gas supply.
All Gas had just laid the pipes 1 week ago.
Not a faulty main, no. The guy's been working with a blowtorch with the electrical.
The gas source shut down after 3/4 of an hour, killing the flames. Nearby pipes checked for safety.
The area is safe, except for the power lines. We're not sure about that. The underground power, Energex is not on site as yet.
The man was airlifted to the Royal Brisbane Burns Unit with burns to 50% of his body. Simone Cunningham, 9 Gold Coast News.
Hub in all lines at Chevron Island this morning. Workmates have risked their lives to try and save them. Residents were woken by explosions and ordered to leave their homes amid fears the crane would topple.
The massive crane exploded into flames around 8 this morning. Its jib struck overhead power lines as the driver unloaded a truck.
He dropped one beam down, pulled around, and he just jibbed onto the wires, and nobody saw it happen. And then I heard this bang, and I saw this other bloke just got thrown off the machine.
Saw a fire start under it, so I quickly ran off to get a fire extinguisher. I turned round and I saw another body laying beside the truck.
The tragic accident claimed the lives of the crane driver and a labourer who'd gone to his aid.
And another man came in to rescue him, and I think he touched the crane, which was still alive.
Both men were in cardiac arrest. Workmates risked electrocution attempting to resuscitate them.
We tried to drag the bodies away from the burning, obviously straight away, so we didn't want to get too close, so we just hooked an air hose around his leg and dragged him as far as we could.
Energex shut down the power as the crane continued to burn.
Get out, it's coming down.
Onlookers and emergency services retreating. The hydraulics ready to give way. It's feared the burning crane will topple over, smashing into power lines and neighbouring homes. Dozens of people had to be evacuated.
They're directly behind the crane. Do you think we should get people out of there as well?
Soon after, the jib collapsed. The area declared safe. Residents were allowed back in their homes. Power remained cut for several hours. The construction site will stay closed while the cause of the accident is established. The safety of emergency personnel will also be assessed.
They put themselves in danger in an endeavour to do something for the patients, and that's to be commended. However, we also need to look at our safety issues involved with the case.
Andrea Tennant, 9 Gold Coast News.
Retracted safely into its housing. Foam finally doused the flames more than 2 hours after the first explosion. Workplace Health and Safety is now investigating the double tragedy. At Chevron Island, Julie Corner, Gold Coast News.
And Gold Coast Local News with Rob Reddings.
Man rescued from Spalding Creek.
Good evening. An elderly man is recovering in hospital after a dramatic rescue from raging floodwaters at Wurrunggeri. Heavy overnight rain again caused havoc across the hinterland, with even emergency service vehicles stranded by the flash flooding.
Another night of torrential rain, another vehicle swept from a flooded causeway. Rescue workers were called to Wurrunggeri Road after neighbours reported a car disappearing into the floodwaters.
I believe he got washed off the causeway up the road here.
Fearing the driver was still trapped, they mounted a desperate search.
Where that light is hitting now.
The fire and rescue officers tied ropes first to trees and then themselves and waded into the darkness. With help from colleagues on the other side of the flooded waterway, they found 63-year-old Ben Walsh clinging to a tree.
He managed to get out of the car, and after some searching and some help from the neighbours, we actually found the male occupant of the car in the creek just below us.
Mr. Walsh was retrieved from the water and treated in an ambulance, which itself needed help as the waters continued to rise. Rescuers were amazed at how far the raging torrent had taken the injured man.
Anything up to 500 metres to a kilometre is very hard to ascertain at this stage.
He's still recovering in Pindara Hospital from numerous injuries.
I think he's very, very lucky.
Elsewhere, police were forced to block roads as the heavy rain continued. At one stage, there were fears the Pacific Highway would be closed at Mudgeeraba as floodwaters lapped at bridges. Despite the danger, motorists continued to try their luck in the atrocious conditions, some more successful than others. And on a night when even the police could not escape the floods, another warning for motorists to stay away from flooded roads and causeways. David Salmon, Gold Coast News.
Firefighters were honoured today for their contribution to the Fire and Rescue Authority. The ceremony coincided with the launch of a new computer trial, which will make firefighters' jobs easier.
Chief Fire Commissioner Wayne Hartley this afternoon presented 9 local firefighters with long service medals. 4 others were presented with Commissioner's commendations for a swift water rescue during the March Wurrunggeri floods. They risked their own lives to save a man clinging to a tree whose car had been washed down the swollen creek.
Car swept over a causeway and the man got washed downstream a couple of 100 metres and he got caught in a tree.
It's absolutely vital for our staff to be recognised for the contribution that they make to the Queenslanders and to the workforce and, of course, to their own workplace.
The presentations coincided with the official opening of the Fire and Rescue Authority's Southern Office. Also on show, a new computer system being trialled on the Gold Coast. Firefighters will use the $7,500 laptop computer as an advanced street directory, making it easier to locate fires in high-rise buildings.
The officer can call up the building and will know the water supplies, will know the lift, will know the lift company, will know the location of the firefighting equipment.
If the trial is successful, a similar computer system will be installed in the Surfers Paradise fire trucks. At Mudgeeraba, Angela Cox, Gold Coast News.
Ahead on Gold.
Prime Gold Coast News with Melissa Downs and Ian Buchanan.
Tonight, a deadly arson attack. A Molotov cocktail sparks an inferno at Ashmore. The police hunt continues for a dangerous fugitive, and women fight back to reclaim the night. Good evening. Welcome to Prime Gold Coast News. The hunt is on for an arsonist who launched a Molotov cocktail into an Ashmore factory overnight, sparking a massive fire. The blaze took 8 hours to control as the building, filled with plastic, went up in a cloud of toxic smoke.
Filled with piles and piles of plastic, the 2-storey factory was soon an inferno. Firefighters' hoses were no match for the heat and flames as temperatures inside soared to around 1,000 degrees. With the petrol station just metres away, there were fears of a major explosion.
So I hit the emergency stop and I went outside and I see flames shooting across the top of the gas tank. And it's a bit scary.
The building is used to store plastic takeaway food containers. It's believed a Molotov cocktail was thrown at the factory door.
At this stage we are treating it as a crime scene and it's still being investigated.
Roads were closed off, every available fire crew called in to help as the blaze raged on.
Water supply has been a big problem here tonight.
And it wasn't the only worry, with the plastic emitting potentially dangerous fumes.
We are concerned about the runoff and where it is going, and that's why we require council EHO.
Dawn and still the battle continued. Firefighters lost in the thick smoke trying to bring it under control. Heavy machinery was called in to get to the heart of the fire. Almost 8 hours after it started, the blaze was finally under control. The factory and a neighbouring pizza shop totally destroyed. Damage bill well in excess of $500,000. At Ashmore, Bernadette Young, Prime Gold Coast News.
And as the blaze continued to burn today, the city was smothered in toxic smoke. Parts of Ashmore shut down, fearful of the potential health hazard.
Daybreak brought its own problems, sunrise heralding a hazy day as the factory kept burning. A column of black smoke billowed from the gutted building, spreading further with each shift in the wind. The aerial ladder firefighters swallowed up in the clouds. Ashmore streets were deserted, residents warned to stay indoors.
For anybody who's healthy, it may give them watery eyes and they may feel a little bit lightheaded and dizzy. Other than that, they should be okay.
Aquinas College declared a no-school day.
Basically, with the fire next door so close and toxic fumes in the air, we can't have students being here. Too much of a risk. 1,200 kids, could you imagine it?
The campus deserted as students were turned away, some obviously thrilled at the unexpected day off.
Yeah, no school, no study. Oh.
600 students from Guardian Angels were also sent home, the arsonist's handiwork disrupting thousands of people.
Though it was not officially declared an emergency situation, nor were there enforced evacuations, many businesses were left with no choice but to shut down for the day.
With Olsen Avenue closed to through traffic and the blaze still going strong next door, the IFS lost a day's trade.
We've had a few come in and we've had to sort of turn them away, but I mean, there's not much we can do about it. It's a lot safer for them to stay away from the place.
Some workers wore masks and carried on, but most gave up. At Ashmore, Julie Corner, Prime Gold Coast News.
9 Gold Coast local news with Rob Reddings.
A large fire in a plastics factory blankets Mollendina in toxic smoke. Light rail plans taking the Gold Coast into the next century. And the nation's best lining up for the battle of the bikes. Good evening. 2 businesses have been completely destroyed by a large fire at Mollendina in the early hours of this morning. The toxic smoke which billowed from the blaze choked the city for hours as residents prepared to evacuate their homes and schools were shut for the day.
The thick toxic smoke which billowed from the roof masked the intensity of the blaze. There was little chance of saving the business, flames shooting into the night sky, officers' hoses dwarfed by the fire. As the inferno raged inside the plastic factory, eerie blue flames licked at the roofing. 2 trucks parked beside the building pushed out of the way. All attention turned to the nearby service station and the gas tanks only metres from the flames.
There's explosions and there's flames shooting across the top of the gas tank, so we bolted.
There was little officers could do but prevent it from spreading.
We're just surrounding and drowning it.
Every available fire truck and officer from as far away as Logan, Lee and Woodridge called in. The roads surrounding the fire were closed off. With daylight came the true revelation of the intensity of the fire, thick smoke still filling the sky. The high-rise of Surfers Paradise clouded in smog. 5 hours after the fire started, the big guns were called in to put it out. A council excavator pulling the factory apart, raking out the piles of plastic biscuit containers which had fueled the flames all night. Despite initial fears they might have to evacuate, most businesses remained open throughout the morning. However, some school children did manage to get a day off.
hopeless to bring kids in. 1,200 kids under that, you couldn't do it.
Those who couldn't go to work caught up on the day's news, while others were eager to get back to business.
Sitting around waiting for the fire to go out, and hopefully we can open up about lunchtime to wash some cars.
The building's owners tried to come to terms with their loss.
I hope we can rebuild it. It's very hard to say.
But from above, it was clear that wasn't to be.
Yeah, the whole complex is totally damaged and totally burnt out, and it'll be a total replacement.
The damage is estimated to be well over $500,000. Marguerite Rossi, 9 Gold Coast News.
And with the fire still smouldering, investigators had to wait until late this morning to inspect the damage. But there was little doubt from the start it was the work of arsonists.
Police have been told 2 firebombs were thrown onto the property. One remained intact, the other hit its mark.
I heard from the left window they throw some bombs, petrol bombs, but I'm not sure now.
Owner Alex Drossos says he can't think of any reason why someone would want to destroy his business.
Hard to say. We've got no enemies. I've got no idea.
9 hours after the fire started, scientific officers were given the all-clear to begin the painstaking task of sifting through the ashes, looking for clues. Workers and insurance assessors today inspected the rubble that was until last night a large business. Test of the bottle used to make the firebomb should provide further clues, and while police have no description of any offenders, they're following other avenues.
No, we don't have a suspect at this stage, but we're certainly following some lines of inquiry that may lead us to some conclusions with the fire.
Detectives are appealing for anyone with information to come forward. Matt Dunstan, 9 Gold Coast News.
Prime Gold Coast News with Melissa Downs and Ian Buchanan.
Tonight, police concerned the man who brutally attacked a streetwalker at Currumbin may strike again. Running down the house to promote fire awareness, and Scott Muller picks up an Aussie test cap. Rabina burnt to the ground while dozens of people, including firefighters, stood around watching. But as the final day of Fire Awareness Week, that was the point, to show the community just how devastating fire can be. In this instance, the fire was a carefully planned affair, but the effect was just the same.
The idea of burning the house is to give the people a particular insight into how quickly a house can become involved in fire.
And it's those first moments that are the most crucial.
Where there's a production of large amounts of smoke and poisonous gases, and then of course the rapid fire spread through the house.
That's when a smoke alarm is vital to send out an early warning. A planned exit route is also essential so that everyone knows how to escape. Those are just 2 points firefighters are trying to get across during Fire Awareness Week.
Because we're very aware that to be able to prevent and save people from an incident is our primary objective.
George, thanks for holding. Listen, 9 might be better if it's not too late. Good?
Russell?
Yes.
We had a deal, remember?